If an avoidant truly loves you, the first sign is not peace, it is tension. Not because the bond is weak, but because it is real enough to wake up every fear they tried to bury. You will feel the pull, the deep calm, the strange closeness, and then, just when it starts to feel like this could become something solid, they step back. They go quiet. They become hard to read. That is the moment most people think the story is ending. But don't click away, because this is where the real story begins. With an avoidant, love rarely arrives like a perfect romance. It comes in waves, near then far, warm then cold, open then distant. And if you do not understand what you are seeing, you will call it rejection when it is really fear. You will think the bond is breaking when it is actually being tested. That is why this matters so much, because when an avoidant and you are deeply connected, one pattern almost always shows up. The connection keeps returning. Not in a clean line, not in a simple way, but it returns. And every return carries a message. So if someone keeps leaving and coming back, do not look only at the distance. Look at what the distance is doing to both of you. Look at what changes when they return. Because sometimes the love that lasts does not start with certainty. Sometimes it starts with confusion, silence, and a bond that refuses to fully die. What usually happens first is something powerful that neither person can fully explain. There is a strong emotional pull. It feels natural, almost too natural. Conversations go deeper than expected. Time together feels different from what both of you have known before. Even the avoidant feels it. They may never say it clearly. They may hide it behind jokes, mixed signals, or silence. But inside, they know this is not casual. Around you, they feel seen in a way that is both comforting and dangerous. They feel calm, but also exposed. They feel safe, but also vulnerable. And that is where the trouble begins. Because for an avoidant, deep closeness can light up old fear faster than it creates peace. It is not always fear of you. It is fear of what loving you might stir up inside them. Fear of needing too much, fear of losing control, fear of depending on someone and then getting hurt, fear of becoming so emotionally involved that they can no longer escape their own feelings. So right when the bond starts to feel important, they begin to back away. Their energy changes, their replies slow down, their warmth becomes inconsistent. One day they are right there with you, and the next day they feel far away. This is the part that hurts. It feels personal. It feels unfair. It feels like something beautiful is slipping through your hands. But stay with this, because the meaning of that distance is everything. The distance is often not proof that the feeling was fake. Sometimes it is proof that the feeling became too real for them to carry all at once. Most people react to that shift in the same way. They panic. They chase. They try to solve the silence with more words, more effort, more emotional pressure. They ask for reassurance. They demand clarity. They try to love harder, explain more, fix more, hold on tighter. It makes sense. When someone pulls away, your heart wants to close the gap. But with an avoidant, chasing often creates the very thing you fear most. The more pressure they feel, the more they pull back. The more urgency they sense, the more they shut down. The more you ask them to prove their feelings, the more trapped they feel by the connection itself. And that is why the story only changes when your approach changes. When it is truly a bond with potential, there comes a moment when you stop reacting from fear and start responding from self-respect. You stop turning every silence into a crisis. You stop making their distance define your worth. You stop trying to drag closeness out of someone who is afraid of it. And this shift is not cold. It is not a game. It is emotional maturity. You begin to understand that their withdrawal may be a defense, not a final answer. So instead of running after them every time they disappear emotionally, you hold your center. You stay calm. You stay clear. You stay grounded. That changes everything. Because now, for the first time, the avoidant is experiencing a connection that does not suffocate them the second fear appears. They feel your care, but they also feel your stability. They feel your presence, but not your pressure. And for someone who has long connected closeness with loss of freedom, that is rare, very rare. Then the pattern begins. They pull away, but after some time, they come back. Maybe slowly, maybe carefully, maybe with only a little warmth at first, but they return. This is where many people get trapped, because a return alone does not mean growth. It only means the bond still lives. What matters is what changes inside the cycle. When the connection is real and moving in a healthy direction, every return carries a small shift. The silence becomes a little shorter. The walls come down a little faster. The conversations feel a little more honest. Their warmth becomes slightly more steady. They may still get scared, but they do not run as far. They may still need space, but they no longer vanish the same way. This is the part most people miss, because they are only looking for perfection. But with an avoidant, progress often comes in inches before it comes in miles. A faster reply matters. A softer tone matters. A moment of honesty matters. A small apology matters. A little more consistency matters. Watch that closely, because if every cycle returns to the exact same pain with no deeper openness, no stronger effort, no greater awareness, then the pattern is only repeating. But if each return brings even a little more truth, a little more vulnerability, a little more willingness to stay present, then something important is happening. The connection is not just surviving, it is evolving. And sometimes that quiet evolution matters more than dramatic promises. Keep listening, because this next part explains why some bonds slowly grow stronger while others break under the same pressure. Over time, the avoidant starts learning something they did not believe before. They start seeing that closeness does not always mean control. Intimacy does not always mean danger. Love does not always mean losing themselves. This lesson is huge for them. It does not happen through speeches. It does not happen because someone begged enough. It happens through repeated emotional experience. They pull away, but the world does not explode. They need space, but they are not punished for it. They come back and they are met with steadiness instead of chaos. Little by little, their nervous system begins to trust what their mind could not trust before. They start to feel that being close to you does not erase them. It does not trap them. It does not demand that they stop being who they are. And because of that, their walls begin to lower, one brick at a time. Not in one big movie scene, not with one sudden confession, but in moments, a longer conversation, a more direct answer, a softer look, a choice to stay in the hard moment instead of escaping it, a sign that they are thinking about you even when they are quiet, a willingness to let you see the parts they usually keep hidden. This is how trust grows in this kind of bond, slowly, quietly, with small proof repeated over time. And if you are paying attention, you will notice it. You will feel that their distance is no longer as sharp as it once was. Their return feels more sincere. Their presence feels less guarded. It is subtle, but subtle does not mean small. Sometimes the softest changes are the ones that matter most. At the same time, you are changing too. And this part is just as important, maybe even more important, because this connection does not only test the avoidant, it tests you. It asks whether you can love without abandoning yourself. It asks whether you can stay open without becoming desperate. It asks whether you can care deeply without turning that care into emotional dependence. In the beginning, you may have wanted them to choose you so that you could finally feel safe. But as the bond matures, something shifts inside you. You begin to realize that your peace cannot depend on whether they are warm today or distant tomorrow. You stop measuring your value by their availability. You stop collapsing every time their energy changes. You start building your own center, your own rhythm, your own emotional ground. That does not mean you stop loving them. It means you stop losing yourself in the process. You become stronger, calmer, less reactive, more honest about what you feel, but also less controlled by every wave of the relationship. And that is powerful, because an avoidant can only stay close to someone who does not disappear into the connection. If you give up your boundaries, your identity, your self-respect, the bond becomes heavy for both of you. But when you remain rooted in yourself, something different happens. The relationship starts to breathe. It becomes less about fear and more about choice. You are no longer saying, "I need you here so I can be okay." You are saying, "I care about you deeply, but I am still whole." That energy changes the entire dynamic. And yes, this is where most weak connections fall apart, and stronger ones begin to prove what they are made of. There is a truth many people do not want to hear. An avoidant cannot build something lasting with a person who keeps trying to save them, fix them, or force them into emotional readiness. And you cannot build something lasting with an avoidant if you make their fear your personal burden to heal. That is where many intense connections break. One person becomes the pursuer, the other becomes the runner. One person overfunctions, the other withdraws. One person tries to carry the whole emotional weight. The other feels more pressure and less freedom. But when the connection is truly moving towards something real, both people begin to meet in the middle. The avoidant starts taking more responsibility for their pattern, maybe not perfectly, but clearly. They become more aware of their shutdowns, more honest about their need for space, less likely to disappear without explanation, more willing to admit when fear is driving their behavior. And you become more responsible for your side too. You stop making every hard moment about immediate reassurance. You stop reading every pause as rejection. You learn to tell the difference between intuition and panic. You create space without becoming emotionally absent. You stay caring without becoming controlling. This middle ground is where real change begins. It is not flashy, it is not dramatic, but it is mature. And mature love is often quieter than fantasy, while being much stronger than fantasy ever was. If this is connecting with you, keep listening, because the next shift is the one that reveals whether the bond is only repeating pain or actually becoming safe enough to last. Eventually, there is a turning point. And if you were expecting some huge scene, you may miss it. It usually arrives quietly. One day you notice they are not running as far. The silence that once lasted a week now lasts a day. The emotional wall that once felt impossible now has small openings in it. They start sharing more without being pushed. They start reaching out without needing the perfect reason. They begin choosing closeness instead of only tolerating it. That is a major difference. Tolerating closeness means they stay near you because the feeling is strong. Choosing closeness means they are starting to trust the bond enough to remain present inside it. That is when the connection becomes different. Not easy, not perfect, but different. You feel less like you are holding the whole thing together alone. The energy starts moving both ways. You feel their effort. You feel their intention. You feel that they are not only returning because they missed you, but because they are beginning to understand what this bond means. And in that moment, you realize something important. The relationship did not survive because it was effortless. It survived because both people changed enough to hold it better. That is the hidden truth. Some connections are not meant to stay exactly as they started. They are meant to transform the people inside them. And if that transformation is really happening, you will see it. Not in words alone, in behavior, in steadiness, in emotional courage, in the growing ability to stay connected without turning closeness into a threat. So, if you are in a situation where an avoidant keeps coming back, do not focus only on the cycle. Anyone can repeat a cycle. Anyone can leave, miss you, and return. The real question is deeper. What is changing within the cycle? Are they becoming more open over time, or only more comfortable taking you for granted? Are their returns bringing more honesty, or only more confusion? Are they learning to speak before they disappear, or do they still leave you carrying all the emotional cost? And what about you? Are you becoming more secure, more grounded, more clear about your worth? Or are you becoming more anxious, more exhausted, more disconnected from yourself? These questions matter because the same pattern can either be growth or damage, depending on what it is producing in both people. If the cycle is leading to deeper trust, better communication, greater self-control, and more emotional maturity, then yes, something real may be unfolding. But if the cycle is only draining you, shrinking you, and teaching you to accept inconsistency as love, then the lesson may not be to wait. It may be to walk away. That is why you cannot judge this kind of bond only by intensity. Intensity is not the same as progress. Chemistry is not the same as safety. Missing each other is not the same as building something lasting. Watch the pattern, yes, but more than that, watch the direction. Because direction tells the truth that feelings alone often hide. Here is another thing people often misunderstand. An avoidant returning does not always mean they are suddenly healed. It does not mean all fear is gone. It does not mean the relationship will now move forward in one straight, beautiful line. There may still be pauses. There may still be moments when they shut down. There may still be times when you wonder if they are slipping back into old habits. The difference is in how those moments are handled. When growth is real, the setbacks do not erase the progress. They become part of the learning. The avoidant may still need space, but they explain it better. They may still feel overwhelmed, but they stop punishing you with silence for it. They may still struggle, but they no longer act as if connection itself is the enemy. And you may still feel hurt at times, but you recover faster. You do not spiral the same way. You ask better questions. You hold stronger boundaries. You protect your peace while staying honest about what you need. This is what emotional maturity looks like in real life. Not perfection, not endless harmony, just two people who are slowly getting better at not letting fear control the whole story. And that kind of progress is powerful because it is earned. It is not based on fantasy. It is built in real moments, under real pressure, with real effort. So if you are living this kind of bond, look carefully. Sometimes the biggest proof of love is not that fear never appears. It is that fear appears and both people still choose growth instead of letting fear make every decision. You also need to understand the difference between patience and self-betrayal. This part matters more than most people realize. Being patient with an avoidant does not mean having no standards. It does not mean accepting crumbs and calling it depth. It does not mean waiting forever while someone gives you just enough affection to keep you emotionally invested. Real patience has structure. It has awareness. It has boundaries. It says, I understand your fear, but I still need honesty. It says, I can give space, but I will not beg for basic respect. It says, I know healing takes time, but time alone is not enough if there is no effort. This is where many strong people lose themselves. They confuse empathy with endless tolerance. They confuse understanding with emotional self-neglect. They keep saying, maybe they just need more time, even when nothing inside the pattern is changing. Do not do that. If this relationship is truly moving toward love that lasts, you should see signs of motion. Small signs are still signs. More truth, more accountability, more care, more courage, more consistency than before. And yes, it may be slow, but slow and stagnant are not the same thing. Slow still moves. Slow still deepens. Slow still reveals commitment in action. So be gentle, but be awake. Be compassionate, but be clear. Love should stretch you, but it should not erase you. And if this message is hitting hard right now, stay with me, because the next piece may be the one that helps you see your situation with fresh eyes. Sometimes the reason this kind of relationship feels so powerful is because it pushes both people into growth they never asked for, but deeply needed. The avoidant is pushed to face intimacy instead of always escaping it. They are pushed to look at the walls they built, the habits they defended, the fear they called independence. And you are pushed to face your own attachment to being chosen, your own fear of abandonment, your own urge to chase certainty from someone who cannot always give it quickly. In that sense, the connection becomes more than romance. It becomes a mirror. It shows both people where they are still unhealed. It exposes patterns that easier relationships may never touch. That is why these bonds can feel so intense. They wake something up. They challenge old survival habits. They force deeper honesty. But here is the key. Growth alone does not justify staying forever. Pain alone does not make a bond sacred. The relationship only becomes truly valuable when growth leads somewhere healthier, when it creates more truth, emotional responsibility. If both people are growing, the bond becomes stronger over time. If only one person is growing while the other keeps hiding behind fear, then the lesson may be personal, not relational. In other words, the connection may still change you even if it does not become your forever story. That is important to remember, because sometimes the deepest mistake is assuming that because a bond is transformative, it must also be permanent. Not always. What matters is whether the transformation is moving both of you toward each other in a real and stable way. And when it is real, when it is truly becoming something solid, the energy starts to feel different. Less frantic, less confusing, less like a constant emotional emergency. The attraction is still there, the depth is still there, but now there is more peace inside it, more room, more honesty. You no longer feel like you must decode every silence. They no longer feel like every emotional moment is a trap. There is more trust in the pauses, more safety in the closeness, more steadiness in the connection. It is still human, still imperfect, still alive with emotion, but it is no longer ruled by panic. That is the shift many people wait for without knowing how to name it. The relationship begins to feel less like survival and more like choice. They choose to speak. You choose not to assume the worst. They choose to return with truth. You choose to listen without collapsing your boundaries. And through enough of those choices, the bond becomes strong in a new way. Not because it never struggled, but because it learned how to struggle without destroying itself. That is rare. That is what makes this kind of love different when it truly matures. It is not built on easy chemistry alone. It is built on evolution, on patience with progress, on emotional discipline, on two people learning slowly and sometimes painfully how to stop letting old fear write every chapter of the story. So if you have been asking yourself whether this connection means something, do not let the answer rest only on how intense it feels. Ask whether it is making both of you better. Ask whether the avoidant is becoming more available, more honest, more emotionally brave. Ask whether you are becoming more secure, more grounded, more faithful to your own needs. Ask whether the cycle is shortening, whether the trust is growing, whether the bond is deepening in ways you can actually see. Because when an avoidant and you are truly meant to build something lasting, this almost always happens. The relationship changes both of you. It pulls hidden wounds to the surface. It demands patience. It demands growth. It teaches emotional maturity in ways that easier love never has to teach. And in the end, it is not the rush that makes it last. It is not the longing. It is not the drama. It is the evolution. It is the slow building of safety where fear used to live. It is the choice to return better, not just return again. It is the quiet moment when both people finally stop fighting the closeness and begin to trust it. And if you are seeing that happen, even slowly, do not ignore it. Because sometimes the strongest love story is not the one that starts perfectly. It is the one that survives confusion, grows through distance, and becomes real because two people learned how to meet each other halfway, instead of asking the other person to do all the changing.